Picture this: a faint autumn breeze slipping through the cracked window of my kitchen, carrying the scent of damp leaves and the distant murmur of a lawnmower. I'm standing here, hands dusted with flour, rolling out dough for a batch of cookies that I don't even particularly want. It's just something to do, you know? My name's Mary, I'm 42, and I've carved out a life in this quiet suburban pocket that feels like it's been photocopied from a catalog. Neat little houses, trimmed lawns, the kind of place where you wave at neighbors even if you can't quite remember their names. My husband, Harry, he's 45, and he's the heartbeat of our home in his own peculiar way, not with grand gestures or long conversations, but with the relentless click of a controller and the synthetic melodies of video game soundtracks that spill from the living room day and night. Our house is a cozy nest, a 2-story with faded blue siding and a porch swing that creaks more than it swings. Inside, it's all warm tones: beige walls, soft throw blankets, and a lingering smell of coffee that never quite fades. But the living room, that's Harry's domain. His gaming setup is like a shrine: a massive TV mounted on the wall, a console glowing with tiny lights, and a tangle of wires that I've long given up trying to organize. The air there hums with the sound of digital battles, epic quests, and the occasional frustrated grunt when a level doesn't go his way. I've gotten used to it over the years, the way some people get used to a ticking clock or a neighbor's barking dog. It's just background noise now. I'll wander in sometimes, balancing a plate of chips or a cold soda, and set it down beside him. He'll mumble a thanks without looking away from the screen, his focus unbreakable, and I'll smile to myself as I head back to whatever I was doing. It's our rhythm, predictable as the sunrise. We've got a new face next door, though, someone who's added a little ripple to our still waters. Ethan, he's 22, moved into the house on our left a couple of months back. He's a lanky kid, all elbows and knees, with tousled brown hair that always looks like he just rolled out of bed. He's quiet, the kind of shy that makes you wonder if he's avoiding eye contact on purpose. I've seen him out in his driveway most days, hunched over a beat-up bicycle, tinkering with the chain or adjusting the brakes, his hands smudged with grease. He doesn't say much, just offers a quick nod if I catch his eye while I'm grabbing the mail. But Harry? Oh, Harry found common ground with him almost instantly. Turns out Ethan's into gaming too, and the two of them can talk for ages about the latest releases, standing out by the fence with animated gestures I rarely see from Harry otherwise. It's nice to see Harry so engaged, honestly. So, when he invited Ethan over for a gaming session this afternoon, I figured it'd be a good chance to play host, make the kid feel welcome. I've got a tray in my hands now, loaded with chips spilling over the edges of a bowl, a couple of icy sodas sweating condensation, and some hastily thrown together sandwiches. Turkey and cheese, nothing fancy. As I step out of the kitchen and into the living room, the air hits me with that familiar electric buzz, a symphony of beeps and booms erupting from the TV. It's like walking into a battlefield, only the warriors are armed with controllers instead of swords. There they are, Harry and Ethan, locked in their digital duel. Harry's slouched on the couch, one leg slung over the armrest, his face bathed in the flickering blue glow of the screen. His fingers dance over the controller with a kind of lazy precision, like he's done this 1,000,000 times, which, let's be honest, he has. Ethan, on the other hand, is cross-legged on the floor, his back hunched forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the TV like his life depends on it. His brow is furrowed, and every now and then, his tongue pokes out the side of his mouth in concentration. It's almost endearing, if it weren't for the sheer intensity radiating off him. The room vibrates with their energy, a mix of competition and camaraderie that I can feel even from the doorway. Man, you totally whiffed that shot. Harry's voice cuts through the game noise, a teasing edge to it as he glances at Ethan with a grin. "What are you even aiming at? The wall?" Ethan lets out a nervous laugh, rubbing the back of his neck with one hand while still clutching the controller with the other. Yeah, give me a break. I'm still warming up." His voice is soft, a little shaky, but there's a spark of humor there, like he's trying to keep up with Harry's jabs. I shuffle forward, careful not to trip over the tangle of cords snaking across the carpet, and set the tray down on the coffee table with a soft clink. The soda cans wobble for a second before settling, and I straighten up, brushing my hands on my jeans. That's when I catch it. Ethan's eyes flicking up from the screen, landing on me. It's not a casual glance, not the kind you give someone just to acknowledge they're there. No, his gaze lingers, sharp and unblinking, like he's studying me. It's odd, almost invasive, and I feel a sudden heat creep up my neck. My fingers instinctively tug at the hem of my blouse, smoothing it down even though there's nothing wrong with it. Why am I even noticing this? I'm probably overthinking it. He's just a kid, right? But then I notice Harry. He's still holding the controller, but his eyes aren't on the screen anymore. They're on me, sharp and unreadable, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. It's a look I can't quite place, somewhere between amusement and something deeper. Something that makes my stomach twist in a way I'm not sure I like. I force a small smile, mutter something about getting back to the kitchen, and turn on my heel before either of them can say anything. My heart's beating a little faster than it should as I step back into the safety of the kitchen, the familiar scent of flour and sugar grounding me. I busy myself with wiping down the counter, trying to shake off the weird tension that settled over me like a fog. What was that look from Harry? And why did Ethan's stare feel so heavy? I'm probably just imagining things, reading too much into a couple of glances. I mean, it's just a normal day, right? Just a couple of guys playing video games while I play the dutiful host. I'm rinsing a dish in the sink when I hear footsteps behind me, the soft scuff of sneakers on the tile. I glance over my shoulder and see Harry standing there, leaning against the doorway with his arms crossed, that same smirk still lingering on his face. He's got this glint in his eyes, a kind of mischievous energy that I haven't seen in a while, not since the early days of our marriage, when we'd stay up late plotting little adventures or silly pranks. My hands pause under the stream of water, and I turn to face him fully, drying them on a dish towel. "What's up?" I ask, keeping my tone light, though there's a nervous flutter in my chest I can't quite ignore. He steps closer, his voice dropping to a low murmur, almost a whisper, like he's sharing a secret meant just for me. "Mary, I've got an idea. Something different." He pauses, letting the words hang in the air, and I feel my brow furrow in confusion. Different? What's he getting at? Before I can ask, he reaches out, his hand finding my arm, pulling me a little closer until I can feel the warmth of his breath. "I want you to go back in there and flirt with Ethan. Take the initiative. See how far you can push it." My breath catches in my throat, and for a moment, I'm sure I've misheard him. Flirt with Ethan? The shy, awkward kid who can barely look me in the eye without blushing? My heart starts racing, a wild thrum against my ribs, and I search Harry's face for any sign that he's joking. But his eyes are gleaming with a mix of excitement and curiosity, like he's already imagining how this might play out. "Are you serious?" I manage to stammer, my voice barely above a whisper. "Harry, what are you even talking about?" He chuckles softly, his grip on my arm tightening just a fraction, not in a threatening way, but like he's trying to anchor me to the moment. "I'm dead serious. It's just a game, Mary. A little fun to spice things up. I want to see what happens. Don't you ever get bored of the same old routine?" His words hit me like a splash of cold water, and I feel my mind spinning, grappling with the sheer audacity of what he's suggesting. A game? Spice things up? This isn't some virtual quest on his console. This is real life, with real people, real consequences. But there's something in his tone, a playful challenge, that tugs at a part of me I didn't even know was there. A part of me that's curious, maybe even a little thrilled by the idea of stepping outside the lines I've drawn for myself over the years. I hesitate, my mouth opening and closing as I try to find the right words. Part of me wants to laugh it off, to tell him he's lost his mind and go back to baking cookies. But another part, a quieter, more reckless part, feels a strange mix of nerves and intrigue bubbling up inside me. What would it be like to play along, just for a moment, to see where this could go? I'm still reeling from Harry's suggestion, my mind a tangled mess of doubt and curiosity, but I find myself nodding slowly, almost against my better judgment. I take a deep breath, steadying myself, and walk back into the living room, the air still buzzing with the synthetic chaos of the game on the screen. My heart's pounding so loud, I'm sure they can hear it over the sound effects. Ethan's still on the floor, controller in hand, his focus glued to the TV, while Harry's lounging on the couch, watching me now with that same unreadable smirk. I force a smile, trying to mask the storm inside me, and sit down on the couch, closer to Harry than I normally would, letting my arm brush against his as if it's the most natural thing in the world. I start small, leaning forward to grab a chip from the tray, making sure my movements are slow, deliberate. "Hey, Ethan, you're doing pretty good out there," I say, my voice lighter than I feel, almost teasing. "Think you can keep up with Harry, or should I start placing bets on him?" I glance at him with a playful tilt of my head, and his eyes snap up to meet mine, wide and startled, like a deer caught in headlights. A faint blush creeps up his cheeks, and he stumbles over a response, muttering something about trying his best. It's awkward, painfully so, but there's a tiny thrill in seeing him flustered, in knowing I've thrown him off balance. I catch Harry's gaze from the corner of my eye, and the glint of approval there eggs me on, even as my stomach churns with uncertainty. But the moment passes, and then there's this heavy silence that settles over us like a thick fog. The game's still blaring, but none of us are really paying attention to it anymore. Ethan's avoiding my eyes now, his hands trembling slightly as he grips the controller, fumbling with the buttons as if he's forgotten how to play. He's pretending nothing happened, like I didn't just cross some invisible line, but the tension in his shoulders tells me he felt it too. I ease back into the couch, my own mind racing, a tidal wave of guilt and confusion crashing over me. What am I doing? Why did I even say that? This isn't me. I'm not the kind of person who plays games like this, not with someone half my age, not with my husband watching like it's some kind of twisted entertainment. My fingers dig into the cushion beneath me, grounding myself as I try to make sense of the mess I've just stepped into. Harry, though, he's got this odd look of satisfaction on his face, a strange glint in his eyes that makes my skin prickle. He leans back, casual as ever, and breaks the silence with a low chuckle. "Hey, Ethan, why don't you swing by again next weekend? We can set up another session, maybe try out that new game I was telling you about." His tone is friendly, inviting, but there's an undercurrent to it, something suggestive that makes my breath hitch. Ethan nods, still not looking at either of us, mumbling a quick, "Sure, sounds good," before his focus snaps back to the screen, like it's his only escape from whatever just happened. The days that follow blur together, but Ethan does come back the next Saturday, just as Harry suggested. He shows up at our door, his usual nervous energy dialed up to 11, a mix of anticipation and unease written all over his face. I can see it in the way he shifts from foot to foot, his hands stuffed deep in his pockets as he waits for Harry to let him in. And it doesn't stop there. Soon, it's every Saturday. A new routine carved out of something that started as a simple gaming invite. Each visit feels heavier than the last, the air in our living room charged with something I can't quite name. Harry's taken to inventing these games of his own, ones that have nothing to do with the console glowing on the table. They're scenarios, little setups that push boundaries I didn't even know I had, and it's late, way past the hour when the neighborhood usually settles into a hush. The clock on the wall ticks past midnight, and I'm sitting in the living room, the space feeling smaller than it ever has before. Ethan left a while ago, his footsteps fading down the driveway, leaving behind a silence that presses against me like a weight. The console is off for once, its little lights dark, the TV screen a blank void reflecting the dim glow of a single lamp in the corner. Harry's beside me on the couch, his presence both a comfort and a source of tension I can't shake. I've been turning over everything in my mind for hours, maybe days, and I know I can't keep it bottled up any longer. My hands are clasped tight in my lap, fingers twisting together as if they can hold back the flood of words I'm about to unleash. I turn to him, my voice barely above a whisper at first, like I'm testing the waters. Harry, we need to talk. Really talk. He looks at me, his face half shadowed in the low light, and there's a flicker of something in his eyes. Maybe apprehension, maybe resignation. He nods slowly, setting his phone down on the coffee table, giving me his full attention for the first time in what feels like forever. And then it all comes pouring out. A rush of emotion I can't control, even if I wanted to. I tell him about the guilt that's been gnawing at me, a constant ache in my chest every time I think about these past few weeks. I confess how scared I am that we've crossed lines we can't uncross, that we've taken something playful and twisted it into a game that's hurting us. My voice trembles as I admit how much I worry about Ethan, about whether we've betrayed his trust by pulling him into this mess without him even realizing the full scope of it. And most of all, I lay bare my fear for our marriage, for the bond we've spent years building, now teetering on the edge of something I don't fully understand. I'm shaking by the time I finish, my breath hitching as I wait for him to say something, anything. For a long moment, he's silent, his gaze fixed on the floor, his jaw tight. I can see the wheels turning in his head, the way his fingers twitch like he's itching to pick up a controller and escape into a digital world where feelings don't have to be faced. But then he looks up at me, and there's a rawness in his expression that catches me off guard. His voice is quiet, almost fragile, as he starts to speak. He tells me he's been using these games, these scenarios, as a way to explore parts of himself he's never dared to share with me before. Fantasies and desires he's kept locked away, afraid of what I might think. But he also admits that it was a test, a way to see how far our trust in each other could stretch, how strong our bond really is. His words hit me hard, each one like a stone dropping into still water, sending ripples through everything I thought I knew about us. And then his voice cracks, just a little, but enough to make my heart ache. He tells me he never meant for it to go this far, that he didn't expect the weight of it to build up like this, pressing down on both of us. He looks away for a moment, his eyes glistening in the dim light, and says he's terrified of losing me, of losing what we have because of a game that got out of hand. I feel my own tears welling up, hot and unstoppable, spilling down my cheeks as I reach out to him without thinking. My hand finds his, and I grip it tight, like it's the only thing keeping me grounded in this storm of emotions. There's relief in hearing him say these things, in knowing I'm not alone in feeling overwhelmed, but there's anger too. A sharp edge to my sadness. How could we let it get to this point? How could we play with something so real, so fragile, and not see the cracks forming until now? We sit there for a while, the silence stretching between us, heavy with everything we've just laid bare. It's like the air itself is holding its breath, waiting for one of us to make the next move. I can still feel the warmth of Harry's hand in mine, a lifeline in the chaos of our emotions, but there's so much left to navigate. That night, after the tears and the confessions, we made a quiet pact to step back, to redraw the lines we'd so carelessly blurred. It wasn't a grand declaration, just a mutual understanding whispered in the dim light of our living room. We knew we couldn't keep going down the path we'd started, not if we wanted to salvage what we had. The next time I saw Ethan, it was a few days later, out by the mailbox. I was grabbing a handful of bills and junk mail when I noticed him tinkering with his bike again in his driveway, his head bent low over the handlebars. My stomach knotted up at the sight of him, a mix of guilt and awkwardness I couldn't shake. I knew we had to say something, to put some distance there. So I took a deep breath and walked over, my sneakers crunching on the gravel. He looked up as I approached, his expression guarded, like he could sense something was coming. I forced a small smile, keeping my voice as gentle as I could. "Hey, Ethan, I just wanted to let you know that Harry and we're gonna take a step back for a while. We need some space as a couple, you know? It's nothing personal, just something we've got to do for us." I watched his face closely, searching for any sign of hurt or confusion, but to my surprise, there was a flicker of relief in his eyes. He nodded quickly, almost too quickly, and muttered, "Yeah, no worries, I get it." His hands fidgeted with the wrench he was holding, and I couldn't help but wonder if he'd felt the weight of everything too, if he'd been carrying his own unease about the strange dynamic we'd created. He didn't say much else, just gave me a tight-lipped smile before turning back to his bike, and I walked away feeling a little lighter, though the guilt still lingered like a stubborn shadow. Back at home, Harry and I started the slow, messy process of rebuilding what we'd nearly broken. Trust, I've learned, isn't something you can just patch up overnight with a few apologies and promises. It's a delicate thing, like stitching up a torn seam. Every thread has to be placed just right, or it'll unravel again. We decided to start couples counseling, something neither of us had ever considered before. The first session was awkward, sitting in a small office with beige walls and a box of tissues on the table, trying to explain to a stranger how we'd ended up here. But as the weeks went on, it became a space where we could unpack everything. The curiosity that had led us astray, the unspoken needs we hadn't known how to voice, the hurt we'd caused each other without even realizing it. It wasn't easy. There were sessions where I'd leave feeling raw, like I'd been turned inside out, and others where Harry would sit in silence, struggling to find the words for emotions he'd buried deep. But we kept showing up, week after week, because we both knew walking away wasn't an option. We also made changes at home, small ones at first, but they added up. The gaming nights, once a staple of our routine, faded away. The console still sat there in the living room, its lights occasionally blinking like a silent reminder of what had been, but we didn't turn it on. Instead, we started filling those evenings with long talks over cups of chamomile tea, sitting at the kitchen table with the window cracked open to let in the cool night air. Sometimes we'd cook dinner together, bumping into each other in the small space, laughing over burnt edges or spilled sauce. Other times, we'd just sit in quiet, sharing the kind of comfortable silence that comes from years of knowing someone inside and out. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, unspoken questions hanging between us, but it felt like home, a place where imperfections were just part of the tapestry we had woven together over the years. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.